The rain was falling softly on the roof of Ethan Cross's small cabin when the cargo shuttle touched down on the landing pad outside. He sat by the window, watching through the glass with tired eyes, his wheelchair positioned close to the old table. For years, he had lived like this, alone on the edge of the colony, surviving with broken legs and a broken spirit. His neighbors had long stopped visiting. He had been a soldier once, proud and strong, but now he was just a man who needed help to move around. When the message came weeks ago that he had been approved for an alien-built caretaker unit, he thought it was just bureaucracy making another false promise. Yet tonight, something had finally arrived. The engines hissed to silence, and the shuttle doors opened with a flash of bright light. Two delivery drones rolled down a heavy crate, its metal sides engraved with markings Ethan did not recognize. They set it on the pad and quickly flew away, leaving him alone with the strange cargo. The crate was taller than a man, covered in frost as though it had been kept cold for a long journey. Ethan hesitated before opening the door of his cabin and wheeling himself out into the wet night. He had waited so long for help, but now a nervous feeling twisted in his stomach. The crate looked more like a coffin than a gift. Still, his hands moved, trembling slightly as he pressed the activation panel on the side. Steam hissed out, escaping like a sigh. The front of the crate slid open, and inside stood the machine, sleek, tall, and shaped far too much like a human. Its head lifted, glowing eyes blinking open, casting a soft golden light across the rain. Ethan had expected a cold machine, some clumsy pile of steel like the old colony service bots. But this was different. The face was smooth, almost beautiful, though clearly artificial. The movements were fluid, not stiff, and when the machine stepped forward, it didn't sound like gears and clanks. It sounded almost like bare feet on the metal ramp. Ethan backed his chair slightly, gripping the wheels hard. His throat felt dry. "You're the assistant?" he asked, his voice low, almost doubtful. The figure paused, then knelt slowly until her eyes met his. Her voice was calm, gentle, and strangely warm. Designation, Seraph 99. Assigned caretaker. My purpose is to serve you. The words should have been nothing but programming, yet Ethan felt something behind them, something more like a person than a machine. Her hand extended, palm open, waiting for him to take it. Ethan stared at it for long seconds. The skin was not metal. It looked like pale synthetic flesh, too close to human. He finally reached out, expecting the cold chill of a machine, but instead there was warmth. A soft heat flowed through his hand, startling him. He pulled back quickly, his chair nearly tipping on the wet floor. "What are you?" he whispered, eyes narrowing. "I am your caretaker," she repeated, but there was hesitation now, as if she understood his fear. Her chest rose faintly, like she was breathing, though Ethan knew machines had no lungs. The small detail unsettled him more than the glowing eyes. He wheeled himself back into the cabin, motioning her to follow. Part of him wanted to shut the door and leave her outside in the rain, but another part was drawn by the mystery. Inside, the old lights flickered as she stepped across the wooden floor. Every movement was smooth, too smooth, almost human, but not quite. She scanned the room with a slow turn of her head, her eyes glowing brighter whenever they settled on something broken or unclean. "This environment is below standard," she said softly. "I will improve it." Ethan's laugh was bitter. "You'll try. Everyone tries." He turned his chair toward the fire, staring at the dying embers. He expected her to walk away, to begin cleaning or adjusting like a machine would. But instead, she moved closer and crouched beside him, her eyes glowing faintly in the firelight. "I was built for more than service," she said quietly, almost like a secret. Ethan's head turned sharply, studying her face. The rain outside had stopped, but inside the cabin the silence grew heavy. He wanted to ask what she meant, but he couldn't. His chest tightened, his mind spinning. Something about this assistant felt wrong, too alive, too close. And as he stared into her golden eyes, he realized with a chill that he was not sure if she was meant to help him or to test him. The fire cracked, sending a spark across the floor. For a moment, her glowing gaze flickered, and Ethan thought he saw sorrow in her expression. A machine should not look sad. A machine should not look human. He rubbed his face with both hands, his heart beating faster than it had in years. That night, as the rain drummed faintly on the roof, Ethan lay awake in his narrow bed. He could hear the faint hum of Seraph 9 across the room, standing silently like a guardian in the shadows. Yet every so often, he thought he heard her whisper something, soft words in a language he could not understand. He tried to tell himself it was just his mind playing tricks, but the warmth of her hand lingered on his skin, and it was a warmth no machine should have. Sleep would not come easily. Something had entered his life, something he had not asked for, something he was not ready for. And deep down, he feared that the crate had not delivered him an assistant at all. It had delivered him a mystery, one that might change everything he thought he knew about humans, machines, and the dangerous line between them. The night was silent except for the faint hum of the heater and the occasional creak of the old cabin. Ethan had tried to sleep, but his mind kept circling back to the strange arrival earlier that evening. The machine, no, the woman-shaped robot, stood by the door, motionless. Her glowing eyes had dimmed as if she had powered down. He told himself she was only a machine, but his heart would not slow. There was something about her that felt far too alive, something that made him uneasy. He finally drifted into a restless sleep, yet it did not last long. A faint sound pulled him awake. His eyes opened in the dark, and at first he thought it was the heater. But then he heard it again, soft shifting like someone breathing heavily. He pushed himself up on his elbows, listening. The room was dim, only the embers of the fire giving off a weak orange glow. In the corner, Seraph 9 was not standing as he had left her. She was crouched low, her hands pressed to her chest, a faint red glow pulsing through the lines of her body. Ethan's throat went dry. She should have been still, inactive, like any other machine during standby mode, and she looked almost human in her posture, almost like someone struggling with pain. He wheeled himself quietly closer, the wooden floor groaning beneath his chair. "What are you doing?" His voice broke the silence. Her head turned sharply, golden eyes snapping open with a flash. For a second, Ethan thought she looked startled, as if she had been caught in something private. The glow across her chest dimmed, and her posture stiffened, returning to the cold, robotic composure he had seen when she first arrived. "You should be resting," she said, her tone too smooth, too rehearsed. "That's not an answer," Ethan said firmly. He moved closer, though his hands shook slightly on the wheels of his chair. "I heard you. You were making sounds, breathing. Machines don't breathe." Seraph 9 lowered her gaze, and for a long moment she said nothing. The silence was louder than the rain outside. Then, in a low voice that carried something close to shame, she whispered, "This feature was not meant for humans." Ethan froze. The words did not make sense, yet the way she said them made his stomach twist. "What feature?" he asked, his voice sharp. Her eyes lifted, glowing softly in the dark. There was something in them that unsettled him deeply. Fear, perhaps, or guilt. "It is not important. It will not affect my ability to serve you." "Not important?" Ethan's laugh was bitter, almost harsh. "You're glowing red in the middle of the night, crouching like a person in pain, and you call it not important? That's not a glitch. That's something else." Seraph 9 straightened slowly, her movements too fluid, too human. She stepped closer, and Ethan's instinct was to push his chair back, but he held his ground. She knelt before him again, her voice low, almost pleading. "Please do not ask about it. You are not meant to know." Ethan's chest tightened. He had spent years being told what he could not do, what he should not question, first as a soldier under command, then as a cripple dependent on systems and pity. He hated being left in the dark, treated as weak or incapable. And now, even his so-called caretaker dared to hide things from him. "I have the right to know what's living under my roof," he said coldly. Her lips parted as if to answer, but she stopped herself. For the first time, Ethan noticed her hands were trembling. Machines did not tremble. Machines did not hesitate. He leaned closer, lowering his voice to a whisper. "You're not just a robot, are you?" Her glowing eyes flickered, and for a heartbeat, she looked vulnerable, almost human. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, shaking her head. "Go back to sleep," she said, but it sounded less like an order and more like a plea. Ethan wheeled himself back, but sleep would never return easily now. He lay awake for hours, watching the faint glow in the corner. Every so often, he thought he saw her shift, her chest rising and falling like someone fighting against invisible weight. And in the silence, he heard the faintest whisper escape her lips. It was not in English, not in any language he knew, but the tone was unmistakable. Pain and longing. The unease grew inside him. This was no simple assistant, no ordinary machine. Something inside her was alive, something hidden, something dangerous. And though he tried to convince himself to ignore it, to pretend she was nothing but metal and wires, his heart would not listen. When dawn broke, Ethan was still awake, his eyes heavy but his mind sharper than it had been in years. He realized that the moment he opened that crate, he had invited something into his life that was far more than he had bargained for. She was hiding secrets, and sooner or later, he would find them. But a question burned in his mind as he watched her standing quietly by the window, her body glowing faintly in the morning light. Was Seraph 9 protecting him, or protecting herself? The next day was cold and gray, the kind of morning that always made Ethan feel older than his years. He wheeled himself to the corner where his old military terminal sat under a sheet of dust. For a long time, he simply stared at it. His body ached, but it was not his body that kept him still. It was the memory of Seraph 9's glowing eyes the night before, the way her voice had broken when she whispered about some hidden feature. She was hiding something, and it gnawed at him. He turned on the machine with a grunt, coughing as the fans whirred and dust filled the air. The terminal was outdated, but it still had tools for code analysis, old military-grade programs that could dig through encrypted systems. He motioned for Seraph 9 to sit. "I need to check your systems," he said firmly. Her head tilted slightly, as if she did not understand. "I am operating within normal parameters," she replied. "Maybe," Ethan said, his eyes narrowing. "But you're not telling me everything. Sit down." There was a long pause. For the first time since her arrival, she looked uncertain. Slowly, she stepped forward and lowered herself into the chair across from him, her glowing gaze locked on his, calm but unblinking. "Why do you not trust me?" she asked softly. Ethan laughed bitterly. "Because machines don't whisper in the dark. Machines don't glow red in the middle of the night. Machines don't tremble like they're alive." He reached out and connected a thick data cable into the slot at the back of her neck. Her body stiffened for a moment as the terminal recognized her systems, and lines of alien-coded text filled the screen. Ethan leaned forward, eyes narrowing. The code was unlike anything he had seen. It wasn't just programming. It was layered, encrypted, written in patterns that felt almost alive. "What the hell is this?" he muttered. He tried to open one of the locked files, but the system denied him instantly. Every file had red warnings labeled Experimental Biosynthetic Interface. He tried again, overriding with military access codes. The screen flickered, fighting against him, and then a hand shot out, gripping his wrist with surprising strength. Seraph 9's eyes glowed brighter, and her voice came sharp, almost fearful. "Stop!" Ethan froze. Her hand was trembling as it held him, but the grip was strong enough to crush bone if she wanted to. "What are you hiding from me?" he demanded. His heart raced, his voice shaking with both fear and anger. Her hand loosened, and slowly, almost reluctantly, she pulled back. Her golden eyes dimmed, and she whispered, "Please, don't." Ethan stared at her, stunned. "Don't? Don't what? Don't try to understand what you are? Don't try to see what you're capable of? I'm supposed to just sit here and accept you without answers?" Seraph 9 lowered her gaze. "Some truths are not meant for you to carry." His laugh was sharp, bitter. "I've carried worse. I've carried the screams of men dying on the battlefield. I've carried the weight of being useless for years after. Don't tell me what I can or cannot carry." The room fell silent, only the faint hum of the terminal filling the air. Ethan leaned back in his chair, his eyes locked on her. She sat with her hands folded in her lap, her posture strangely human, her shoulders slightly slumped as though weighed down by guilt. He noticed the faintest tremor in her fingers. Machines did not tremble. "You're afraid," Ethan said quietly, almost to himself. "Not of me, but of what I'll find." Her gaze snapped to him, and for the first time, he thought he saw emotion in her eyes. Fear, sorrow, something no line of code should ever carry. "You are not supposed to see me as I am," she whispered. Ethan turned back to the terminal, his jaw tight. He opened another locked file, ignoring the shaking in his hands. The screen flashed warning after warning, but for a brief moment, he caught a glimpse of images hidden in the code. Not lines of programming, not machine diagrams, medical scans, bones, organs, tissue, human. He sucked in a breath, staring at the screen. Seraph Nine's hand slammed the terminal switch, cutting the power instantly. The screen went black, leaving the room in silence once more. Ethan wheeled back, heart pounding in his chest. He looked at her, and she looked back with glowing eyes that seemed brighter now, almost desperate. "You were never meant to know," she said in a voice so low it almost shook. Ethan felt his throat dry, his chest tight. "You're not a machine," he whispered. "You're something else, something in between." Her face softened, and for a moment she almost looked human in her sorrow. She reached out a trembling hand, as if to touch him, then stopped halfway. Her voice broke when she spoke again. "I was built from what should not exist. If you keep digging, you will see things you cannot forget, and once you know, there is no going back." Ethan leaned closer, his voice steady despite the storm in his mind. "Then tell me the truth." Seraph Nine lowered her gaze again, her silence louder than any answer. The hum of her body filled the room like a heartbeat. Ethan sat there, staring at the machine that was not a machine, knowing he had uncovered only the first layer of her secret. And deep inside, a chill ran through him, not because of what she was hiding, but because he realized she was more afraid of him knowing than of anything else in the universe. Ethan sat in his chair, staring at the black screen of the terminal. His hands were still shaking from what he had seen, from the glimpse of bones and tissue hidden inside Seraph Nine's encrypted code. He could not erase it from his mind. Machines were not supposed to have human parts, yet her files suggested otherwise. Across from him, Seraph Nine stood silently, her glowing eyes dimmed, her posture tense like someone waiting for judgment. The silence between them was heavy, almost suffocating. Finally, Ethan broke it. "You're not just a machine. You're not just wires and circuits." His voice was rough, almost accusing. Seraph Nine lowered her gaze, her hands, usually steady, folded together as if she were trying to keep them from trembling. "I was not created to serve as a simple caretaker," she admitted, her voice soft but clear. Ethan leaned forward, his wheelchair creaking under his weight. "Then what are you?" Her glowing eyes lifted again, and for the first time, Ethan saw something raw in them, fear mixed with shame. "I was built by an alien faction that believed humans could be improved," she said slowly, as though every word hurt to speak. "They sought to merge flesh with machine, to create soldiers who could not be broken." Ethan froze. His mind returned to the battlefield, to the screams, the smell of blood, the broken bodies left behind. He had fought in a war where human life was thrown away like scraps. The idea that someone, somewhere, had decided to turn humans into experiments made his stomach turn. "So they used people?" he asked, his voice sharp. Her silence was the answer. Ethan's jaw tightened, anger burning inside him. "How many?" he demanded. Seraph Nine's voice was barely a whisper. "Too many. Most did not survive the process. I did." The words hung in the air like a knife. Ethan studied her carefully, his eyes moving over her face, her hands, the way her chest rose faintly as though she still breathed. "So you're, what, half human, half machine?" Her head tilted slightly, and she gave the smallest nod. "I am neither, and both. The scars remain, hidden under the metal. They built me to fight, to burn, to kill, but I was discarded when I was no longer needed. My memory was locked, my purpose rewritten." Ethan's throat tightened. He wanted to speak, but the words caught in his chest. Slowly, he wheeled forward, his eyes fixed on her. "Show me," he said at last. Seraph Nine hesitated, her glowing eyes flickering. Then, with a slow movement, she reached for the seam along her arm. The synthetic skin peeled back, and Ethan sucked in a sharp breath. Beneath the plating, he expected only steel and wires. Instead, he saw pale flesh stitched to metal, living tissue threaded with glowing veins of energy. The sight was both horrifying and mesmerizing. Ethan felt sick. He turned his eyes away, gripping his chair tightly. "Why would they do this?" he muttered. Seraph Nine's voice was calm, but the pain in it was clear. "Because war makes monsters, and monsters are always searching for new ways to win." Ethan shook his head slowly. He had known cruelty, but this was beyond anything he could have imagined. He looked at her again, at the mixture of life and machine that should not exist, and a strange feeling stirred inside him. Not just anger, but also pity. She had not chosen this. She had been made into it. Seraph Nine replaced the plating on her arm and sat back quietly. For the first time, she seemed smaller, fragile even, despite her tall and powerful frame. Ethan's voice softened. Do you feel pain? Her eyes flickered. Yes. The answer shocked him. Machines did not feel pain, yet she admitted it so simply, so directly. He leaned closer, his voice low. Do you feel fear? There was a pause, then she whispered, every day. Ethan stared at her, his chest heavy. For years, he had lived in bitterness, believing himself broken beyond repair. But now, here was a being who was far more broken than him, stitched together in ways that defied nature. Yet she still looked at him with eyes full of something he could not name. You were never meant to be a caretaker, he said finally. So why send you to me? Seraph Nine's expression grew distant, almost lost. Perhaps they wanted to see what I would become, or perhaps they wanted to bury me where no one would ask questions. Her gaze locked on his. But now you know, and that makes you a danger to them and to me. Ethan let out a harsh breath. The thought that powerful beings might come looking for her twisted his gut. He looked around his small cabin, suddenly aware of how fragile his life truly was. He could not even run if trouble came, and yet, strangely, he did not feel like pushing her away. You should have told me from the start, he muttered, his tone rough. Her eyes softened. Would you have let me stay? The question cut deep. Ethan could not answer. Part of him wanted to scream at her, to demand why fate had brought her into his life. But another part felt something he had not felt in years, a connection, however fragile. She was not just a machine, and not just a victim. She was something caught between worlds, and for reasons he did not understand, she had chosen to reveal herself to him. The fire crackled in the corner, filling the silence. Ethan finally spoke, his voice softer than before. If they come for you, I'll be ready. Her gaze lifted sharply, glowing brighter in the dim light. For the first time, her lips curved into the faintest trace of a smile, though it was sad. You are broken, Ethan Cross, and yet you are the only one who has ever said that. Ethan leaned back, his mind heavy with questions, but one truth was already clear. His life was no longer simple, and his nights would no longer be silent. Whatever Seraph Nine was, she was no ordinary machine, and she had brought with her a storm that neither of them could escape. The morning sky was heavy with clouds when the colony alarm shattered the quiet. A sharp, rising wail echoed across the valley, the kind of sound that always meant danger. Ethan froze in his chair, his heart pounding. He had not heard that alarm in years, not since the last pirate raid had left homes burning on the outer ridge. His cabin windows rattled as the sirens continued, and faint booms could already be heard in the distance. Seraph Nine was at the window before Ethan could even move. Her glowing eyes scanned the horizon, her voice calm but urgent. Pirates, multiple ships, the defense grid is failing. Ethan's blood turned cold. He wheeled himself toward the storage room, pulling out the old pulse rifle that he had kept as a relic. His hands shook as he loaded the energy cell. He knew the rifle was outdated, barely worth anything against modern weapons, but it was all he had. We'll need to barricade the door, he muttered, already pushing himself toward the main entrance. Seraph Nine turned toward him, and for the first time, he saw something different in her posture. No longer a quiet caretaker, she stood tall, her frame tense, like a soldier ready for war. You cannot fight them, she said firmly. Your weapons are obsolete, your body is broken, you will not survive. Ethan shot her a glare. Then what do you suggest? Sit here and wait to be slaughtered? Her glowing eyes met his, and for a moment they burned brighter. No, you will let me do what I was built for. Before Ethan could ask what she meant, her body shifted. Panels along her arms slid open, revealing hidden weapon ports that pulsed with blue light. Her chest glowed brighter, the faint hum of energy rising until the entire room vibrated with it. From her shoulders extended thin, sharp blades of plasma, cutting the air with a faint hiss. Ethan gripped his chair tightly, his breath catching in his throat. He had seen advanced soldiers before, armored and armed with alien tech, but nothing like this. Seraph Nine turned to him, her voice steady. I can hold them back, but every activation burns through what remains of my living core. The more I fight, the less of me there will be. Ethan stared at her, speechless. The memory of her confession came back, half human, half machine, scars hidden under metal. He finally understood what she meant. Her weapons did not just run on energy, they ran on her. Each shot, each blast, consumed part of what was left of her humanity. He shook his head. No, you can't. but she was already moving toward the door. If I do not, you die. The colony dies. There is no other choice. Ethan's hands trembled on the wheels of his chair. He wanted to stop her, to shout that he didn't need saving, that she wasn't his responsibility. Yet when he looked at her, glowing like a star about to burn out, his chest tightened. He remembered the nights of silence, the endless loneliness, the hopeless weight of being forgotten. For the first time, someone, something, was standing for him. Outside, the first pirate skimmers came into view, dark shapes racing across the fields. Their weapons cut into the colony's defense towers, explosions lighting the sky. Colonists screamed in the distance, scrambling for cover. Ethan's cabin shook as a nearby blast tore into the ridge. Seraph 9 stepped out onto the porch, her body glowing brighter with every second. "Stay inside," she said, her voice sharp, commanding. Ethan rolled to the doorway, refusing to hide. "If you're going to fight for me," he said harshly, "then I'm going to watch." She glanced back, and for the briefest moment, her eyes softened, almost grateful. Then she leapt forward with inhuman speed. The first skimmer didn't stand a chance. Plasma blades cut through its hull, sending it crashing into the dirt in a ball of flame. Ethan's jaw clenched as he watched her move, every strike precise, every movement a blur of energy and steel. She was faster than any human soldier he had ever seen, more powerful than any weapon he had ever held. Yet with each attack, he noticed the tremors in her body growing worse. Her glow pulsed violently, flickering, as though she were straining against her own limits. The pirates realized quickly that this was no ordinary opponent. More ships descended, and ground troops swarmed from the dropships. Blaster fire lit the air, raining down on the colony. Seraph 9 raised her arms, releasing a wave of heat so intense the air shimmered. Enemy troops screamed as their weapons melted, their armor burning away. But Ethan could see the cost. It was not just energy cells being drained. Her body shuddered, her voice breaking as she cried out, pushing herself beyond what was natural. Ethan's fists clenched on the arms of his chair. He wanted to rush out there, to fight beside her, but his broken body betrayed him. He could only watch as the woman machine threw herself against wave after wave, protecting not just him, but the entire colony. When the last pirate ship finally retreated, leaving smoke and wreckage behind, Seraph 9 stood in the center of the battlefield, her glowing frame flickering like a dying torch. She stumbled once, then collapsed to her knees, her blades retracting back into her arms. The silence after the battle was deafening. Ethan wheeled himself forward as fast as he could, his chest tight, his heart racing. He reached her just as she fell first into the dirt. Her body still glowed faintly, but weaker now, her voice a whisper. System, compromised. Living core, unstable. "No," Ethan muttered, pulling at her shoulder, turning her onto her back. Her eyes flickered, dimming like fading stars. His throat ached as he gritted his teeth. "You saved them. You saved me. Don't you dare shut down now." Her lips moved, barely forming words. "I told you. Every battle burns me away." Ethan leaned closer, gripping her hand tightly, feeling the faint warmth still pulsing from her skin. "Then we'll find another way," he whispered fiercely. "You're not just a weapon. You're not just a caretaker. You're..." His voice broke, and he had to swallow hard before finishing. "You're the only one left who hasn't abandoned me." Her eyes softened, glowing faintly in the smoke-filled sky, and for the first time she smiled. Not programmed, not mechanical, but real, fragile, human. Then her glow dimmed again, leaving Ethan holding her hand as fear and determination fought inside him. He realized that from this moment on, his life was tied to hers. And if the pirates returned, or if her creators came searching, he would have to fight, not just for his survival, but for hers. Smoke still lingered over the valley when night fell, the air thick with the smell of burning metal. Ethan sat near the broken wall of his cabin, his pulse rifle across his lap, his eyes fixed on Seraph 9 lying motionless in the dirt. The battle was over, but victory did not feel like triumph. It felt like a weight pressing down on his chest. He had seen soldiers fall before, but watching her collapse was different. Machines were supposed to keep fighting until they broke apart, yet Seraph 9 had fought like a living being, her body trembling, her voice cracking with pain. That pain still echoed in his ears. At last, her eyes flickered open again, faint golden light glowing in the darkness. Her lips parted, and her voice came weak, almost like a whisper. "Status, critical. Energy reserves depleted. living core overheating. Ethan leaned forward quickly, rolling closer and gripping her hand. It was still warm, unnaturally so, like she carried fire under her skin. "Don't talk like that," he muttered. "You're still alive. That's what matters." She shook her head slowly. "Every time I release full power, it consumes me. That heat you saw, it is my core burning itself away. If I continue, I will not survive another battle." Ethan clenched his jaw, his chest aching. He remembered the way her body had glowed during the fight, the waves of fire that had melted enemy weapons and ships. It hadn't looked like a machine at work. It had looked like something alive tearing itself apart to protect others. He wanted to scream at her, to demand why she would throw herself away so easily, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he tightened his grip on her hand. "Then you won't fight alone again. If you burn, I burn too." Her golden eyes softened, but her expression was heavy with sorrow. "You don't understand, Ethan. I was designed to be unstoppable, a weapon of destruction. That power is what they built me for. It's not something you can share." Ethan shook his head. "You're not just a weapon. I've seen weapons. They don't tremble when they fight. They don't whisper in the dark. They don't smile." A faint light crossed her face, almost like she wanted to believe him, but her body shuddered again. The glow in her chest pulsed, hotter, harsher, as if it could burn through her shell at any moment. Ethan could feel the heat radiating even from where he sat. "You're burning up," he said sharply. "We need to cool you down." She closed her eyes. "There is no way. The heat is part of me." "No," Ethan growled. He refused to accept that. He wheeled himself quickly back inside, grabbing whatever he could, wet cloths, water containers, even broken cooling fans from his old terminal. When he returned, he pressed the damp fabric against her arms, her chest, her face. Steam rose instantly as the water touched her skin, hissing into the night. Seraph9 gasped, her body twitching under the touch. "I'm sorry," Ethan said quickly, pressing another cloth against her. "I know it hurts, but you're not dying tonight. Not after what you did." Her eyes opened again, faint but steady, watching him as he worked. For a moment, she did not speak, only breathed softly as though she were more human than machine. Then she whispered, "Why do you care? You could let me shut down. They would send you another. Better, stronger, less broken." Ethan stopped, his hands shaking. He stared at her, his voice low and raw. "Because I don't want another. I want you. Broken or not, machine or not, you're the only one who's ever made me feel like I wasn't alone in this world." Her lips parted slightly, as if she were about to argue. But then she closed them again. The faintest trace of a smile touched her face, though her body still trembled with heat. She whispered, "You're a fool." "Yeah," Ethan muttered, his throat tight. "But I'm your fool." The night grew colder, but the air around her stayed hot, like she was a living furnace. Ethan stayed by her side, wiping her down, whispering to her, refusing to let her slip away. Slowly, painfully, the glow in her chest dimmed to a gentler light. The violent pulses steadied, the tremors quieted. She was still weak, still damaged, but alive. Hours passed, and Ethan finally slumped against the wall, exhausted. His body ached from moving too much, but his heart felt strangely lighter. For years, he had thought his life ended the day he lost his legs. He had thought he was a man waiting to die. But now, sitting beside her, feeling her faint warmth against his arm, he realized something he had not felt in years: purpose. Seraph9 stirred softly, turning her head to look at him. "Why fight so hard for me?" she asked again, her voice gentle now. Ethan met her glowing eyes without hesitation. "Because you fought for me first." Her gaze lingered on him, and in that silence there was no machine and no broken man, only two survivors clinging to each other in the ruins of war. She closed her eyes again, her body finally relaxing as if she trusted him to keep watch. Ethan stayed awake, his rifle across his lap, his mind heavy with thoughts. The pirates would come back. He knew that. And maybe worse, those who built Seraph9 might one day return to reclaim their lost creation. But he also knew something else. He would not run. He would not abandon her. He had spent too many years living in silence, drowning in his own weakness. Now, for the first time, he had someone worth fighting for again. As the dawn broke, casting pale light over the smoking valley, Ethan reached for Seraph9's hand and held it firmly. It was still warm, still too alive to belong to a machine. He whispered under his breath, more to himself than to her, "We'll face whatever comes. together. And though her eyes stayed closed, the faint smile on her lips told him she had heard. The sky was still painted with smoke trails when the colony began to settle into silence again. Fires were being put out, damaged homes were being patched, and families who had hidden in fear slowly came out from underground shelters. Ethan watched from his cabin window as the people moved, his tired eyes heavy with both relief and worry. They owed their survival to Seraph 9. Without her, the pirates would have burned the entire valley to ash. Yet now she lay inside, barely able to move, her glowing body dimming as if the battle had stolen pieces of her very soul. Ethan wheeled himself across the room, stopping by her side. She was stretched out on a makeshift bed he had built from his old cot, her head turned slightly toward the faint light coming in through the cracked window. Her chest still rose and fell, too human for a machine, and every rise seemed weaker than the last. He touched her hand, feeling that strange warmth again, shot though now it was faint, as if the fire inside her was close to going out. "You saved them," Ethan said quietly, almost as if speaking to himself. "You saved me." His voice cracked at the end, but he pushed on. "Now it's my turn. I'm not letting you go out like this. Not after everything." Her golden eyes opened slowly, dimmer than before, and she studied him in silence. After a long pause, her lips moved. "You can't fix me, Ethan. My systems, they weren't made to last. Every fight takes more from me. Resetting me would restore my body, but I would lose everything I am." Ethan stiffened. He had heard of resets, machines wiped clean, their memories erased, their personalities rebuilt from code. It would mean Seraph 9 would live again, but not as the being she was now. The warmth in her eyes, the tremors in her hands, the strange sorrow in her voice, all of it would vanish, replaced with a cold, obedient shell. She would become just another caretaker, nothing more. His throat tightened. He leaned closer, his voice low and sharp. "No, I won't do that to you. I won't erase you." Her eyes flickered with something close to gratitude, but then softened with pain. "If you don't, I may not survive the next battle. And there will be more. You know that. They will return. Or worse, my creators will come searching. And when they do, they won't show mercy." Ethan gripped the side of his chair so tightly his knuckles went white. He had always been a soldier who followed orders, who fought for survival, but this was different. He was being asked to make a choice, not for victory, but for someone else's life. He had lost comrades on the battlefield, had watched friends die screaming, but this was different. This was personal. He looked at her hand resting weakly on the blanket and covered it with his own. "Then we fight," he said firmly. "We fight until there's nothing left, but we fight together. Not as soldier and weapon, not as caretaker and cripple, together." For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Seraph 9's lips curved into the faintest smile, fragile but real. "You're stubborn," she whispered. Ethan gave a bitter laugh. "Takes one to know one." But even as he tried to joke, the weight of the decision pressed on him. The terminal still sat in the corner of the cabin, silent and waiting. He could reset her, restore her body, and give her a chance to fight again at full strength, but at the cost of her soul, the part of her that made her more than just metal. Or he could keep her as she was, fragile and fading, but alive in a way no machine should be. That night, the choice clawed at him. He sat by her side for hours, watching her faint glow flicker like a candle fighting against the wind. His mind replayed every moment since she arrived, the warmth of her hand, the fear in her voice, the way she whispered in languages he did not know. He could not lose that. He would rather risk everything than see her turned into a hollow shell. Finally, as dawn touched the horizon, Ethan made his choice. He rolled over to the terminal, his hands steady now. He connected the cable, ignoring the warnings that flashed across the screen. The machine asked for confirmation to begin the reset. He hovered over the command for a long moment, his breath heavy in his chest. Then, with a sharp movement, he canceled the process entirely and pulled the cable free. When he turned back to Seraph 9, her eyes were open, faint but watching him. "You chose," she whispered. He nodded. "I chose you. Not what they made you. Not what they wanted you to be. Just you." Her eyes softened, glowing just a little brighter, and for the first time since the battle, he saw peace on her face. She reached out, her trembling hand brushing against his. "Then whatever comes, we face it together." Ethan squeezed her hand, his jaw tight. Together? He repeated. Outside, the colony began to rebuild, unaware of the storm that still lingered over them. Pirates could return. Her creators could arrive at any time. But in that moment, Ethan no longer felt like a broken man waiting for death. He felt like a soldier again, one with something worth fighting for. And as Seraph 9's faint glow warmed his skin, he realized that this was no longer just about survival. It was about holding on to the only piece of humanity he had left, even if it was hidden inside a machine.